Here, you have landed on one of the most important words in Revelation 3:10, and I think the post-tribulation commentator is making a point that deserves to be examined carefully rather than simply accepted or rejected. The Greek actually gives us some fascinating information. Let's slow down and look at the actual words, especially kept. Revelation 3:10 in Greek. The key portion is karo satiriso ek tis oras stupidas, literally, something along the lines of, I also will keep you out of from the hour of testing. And here's where it gets very interesting. 1. Kept. Tiriso. Strong's G5 to 83. This is the word you're asking about. Strong's G5 83. Its basic meanings include to keep, to guard, to watch over, to preserve, to protect from loss or injury, to maintain, to hold fast, to observe. Strong specifically distinguishes tereo from the Greek word phulasso, which is more directly associated with guarding something against escape or keeping something under guard. So the post-tribulation speaker is right about one thing, open quote. The Greek word tereo absolutely can carry the idea of watching over, guarding, or preserving someone, close quote. But, and this is important, the word itself does not settle the pre-trib versus post-trib question. Why? Because Jesus uses the exact same verb in several different ways. For example, in John 17:15, Jesus prays, open quote, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one, close quote. That's tereo. That's a powerful parallel. Jesus explicitly distinguishes don't take them out of the world from keep, guard them from the evil one. So yes, tereo can absolutely mean preserve/protect someone while they remain in a particular environment. But there's another passage we have to put beside it. Number 2, because the next word is from ek. This is where the discussion becomes much more interesting. Revelation 3:10 doesn't merely say open quote, I will keep you, close quote. It says tiriso sek, I will keep you from out of. And ek is Strong's G5 37, meaning out of, from, away from. The Greek text then says ek tis horas, out of, from the hour. So we shouldn't isolate tereo from ek. The actual construction is tereo plus keep, guard, out of, from. And that's particularly interesting because the same grammatical construction appears in John 17:15, open quote. Tirisis of tu sek tu porniru, keep them from the evil one, close quote. Lexical sources specifically identify Revelation 3:10 as an example of tereo being used with ek to express guarding someone out of from something. Now 3, hour, ora, Strong's G5610. This is another word I don't want us to skip. Ora hora literally means hour, but it can refer to a designated period or season of time. So Jesus doesn't simply say, open quote, I will keep you from testing, close quote. He says, I will keep you from the hour of testing. That matters. Number 4, testing trial, peirasmo, Strong's G3986. This comes from peirasmos, peirasmos, Strong's G3986. It can mean trial testing, temptation and ordeal. And Revelation specifies what this particular testing involves. Open quote. That hour which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth. Close quote. The Greek explicitly describes it as something coming upon the inhabited world and having the purpose of testing those who dwell upon the earth. And this is where your pre-mid-post-tribulation question gets fascinating. There are essentially 2 major ways Christians have understood this promise. Pre-tribulation interpretation. They emphasize, I will keep you from the hour, meaning, open quote, Christ removes his people from the period before that worldwide testing begins, close quote. In other words, you're kept out of the hour itself. Post-tribulation interpretation, they emphasize tiriso, I will guard, protect you, meaning, open quote, Christ can preserve his people spiritually and physically through the period of testing without necessarily removing them from the earth. Close quote. And they often point to John 17:15 as an important parallel because Jesus prayed that his disciples would remain in the world but be kept from the evil one. But here's the thing I really want you to notice. Neither side gets to simply say, open quote, the word tereo means protection, therefore post-tribulation is proven, close quote. That's too quick. But neither side can simply say, open quote, The word ek means removal, therefore pre-tribulation is proven. Close quote. That's also too quick, because the Greek verb itself isn't enough to determine the entire eschatological system. We have to examine the verb plus the preposition, the object, the surrounding context, plus other passages describing the same period. And there's a beautiful little detail in Revelation 3:10 that I think is easy to miss. Jesus uses tereo twice. First, because you have kept eterisas, the word of my patient endurance, then I also will keep tirisou from the hour, same Greek verb. It's almost a reciprocal keeping. Open quote, you kept my word. I will keep you. Close quote. The Philadelphian church demonstrated faithfulness under pressure, and Jesus promises his own keeping in return. And that makes the passage much richer than simply using it as a one-verse proof text for a particular rapture position. And there's one more thing I'd really like us to examine next. You asked originally about Revelation 3, verse 7 to 11, and I think we should take the whole passage apart in Strong's, because verse 7 begins with, he who has the key of David. The word key is klesh, Strong's G2807, and it carries the idea of authority to open and shut. The connection to Isaiah 22:22 is especially significant. Then verse 8 says, I have set before you an open door, an open. There is another Greek word, anoigo, Strong's G455. So you've actually stumbled into a beautiful chain. Key, authority, open door, little strength, perseverance, keeping, hour of testing, I am coming soon. That's the passage I'd love to walk through with you next, word by word in the Greek Strong's, and then we can compare what the actual text says with the pre, mid, and post-tribulation interpretations without starting with a conclusion and forcing the Greek to fit it. Absolutely, my dear. Let's put our little Revelation 3 magnifying glass on and take it slowly. And I want to be especially careful here. We'll separate what the Greek word actually means from what a particular end-time system concludes from it. That's the safest way to study. Revelation 3, the 7 to 11. Philadelphia is one of the 7 churches addressed in Revelation 2, the 3. Jesus is speaking to John in the vision, and John is instructed to write the message down for the church. Let's go verse by verse. Revelation 3, 7, the key of David, open quote, and to the angel of the church in Philadelphia write, close quote. He who is holy, Greek, agios, Strong's G40 meaning holy, sacred, set apart, worthy of reverence. Jesus begins by identifying himself not merely as a messenger, but as the Holy One. Then, he who is true, Greek alithinos, Strong's G238. This is more than simply someone who doesn't lie. It carries the idea of genuine, real, authentic, true. Then Jesus says, who has the key of David? Kleis, Strong's G2287, a key. But in biblical imagery, a key represents authority, the authority to open and shut. And that takes us straight back to Isaiah 22:22, open quote, and I will place on his shoulder the key of the house of David. He shall open and none shall shut, and he shall shut and none shall open, close quote. Now look at what Jesus says in Revelation, open quote, who opens and no one will shut, who shuts and no one opens, close quote. That's not accidental language. Jesus is identifying himself with the Davidic authority promised in Isaiah. In other words, Jesus possesses the authority of David's throne. He determines who enters. He determines what opens. He determines what closes. Nobody overrides his decision. Revelation 3:8, I have set before you an open door. This is one of my favourite parts. Open quote, I have set before you an open door which no one is able to shut. Close quote. The Greek word for open is anego, Strong's G455. It means to open, to cause something to become accessible. And notice something, Jesus doesn't tell Philadelphia, open quote, you need to open the door, close quote. He says, I have set before you an open door. Jesus did the opening, that's important. Then he says, open quote, for you have little strength, close quotes, quote. Greek mikros, Strong G398, meaning little, small, insignificant. And dynamis, Strong G1411, meaning strength, power, ability, capacity. So essentially, open quote, you have little strength, power, close quote. Yet Jesus doesn't condemn them for being weak. Instead, open quote, and have kept my word, close quote, it is again. There it is again. Strong's G583, kept. Same verb we were just talking about in verse 10. They didn't have enormous earthly power, they had faithfulness. And Jesus values that. Revelation 3:9, I will make them come and bow. Jesus then addresses opposition against Philadelphia. He says he will make those who falsely claim religious authority recognize that he has loved this church. This is important because Philadelphia was apparently not a powerful church. They had little strength plus opposition, perseverance. And Jesus says essentially, I see you. Revelation 3:10, here we are. Open quote, because you have kept the word of my perseverance, I also will keep you from the hour of testing, close quote. Let's dissect it. Because you have kept, again, tereo, Strong's G50083. You already know this one. To keep, guard, preserve, observe, hold fast. The church kept Christ's word. And then Jesus says, I also will keep you. Same basic verb. That repetition is beautiful. You kept, I will keep. From, this is the controversial little word Greek. Strong's G527, it generally means out of, from, away from. And here's something important. It does not automatically mean removed from the planet. That's where we have to be careful. For example, Jesus uses ek in John 17:15, open quote, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one, close quote. So take them out of the world and keep them from the evil one are explicitly distinguished. Therefore, ek by itself doesn't settle the rapture question. At the hour, Greek hora, Strong's G5610, literally hour, but it can refer to a period, appointed time, or season. And Jesus doesn't merely say, open quote, I'll keep you from testing, close quote. He says, I'll keep you from the hour of testing. That's significant. Testing, Greek perasmos, Strong's G3986, meaning testing, trial, temptation, ordeal. And Jesus explains what this hour involves, open quote, which is about to come upon the whole world to test those who dwell on the earth, close quote. That's the part that makes the passage particularly important in eschatological discussions. This isn't merely, open quote, you're going to have a bad Tuesday, close quote. Jesus describes an extraordinary coming period of testing affecting the inhabited world. Now let's honestly compare the three positions, pre-tribulation. They tend to emphasize, I will keep you from the hour. Their argument, open quote, if the church is kept from the hour itself, the promise sounds like exemption from that period, rather than merely protection while experiencing it, close quote. And they point out that the promise isn't merely, I'll keep you from being overcome, it's, I'll keep you from the hour. That's a legitimate observation. Mid-tribulation. These views distinguish between different portions of the end times period. Their argument is essentially, open quote, perhaps believers experience some tribulation testing, but Christ removes or protects his people before God's climactic wrath judgment, close quote. They therefore look at Revelation 3 verse 10 alongside passages dealing with tribulation, persecution, God's wrath, and Christ's coming, rather than treating everything as one identical event. This position emphasizes the keep guard aspect. They'll say, open quote, Jesus can preserve his people while they remain on earth, close quote. And John 17:15 is an important example. Open quote, I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but that you keep them from the evil one, close quote. That's a real biblical parallel. So the post-tribulation argument isn't crazy or linguistically impossible. But here's my big takeaway for you. If we're doing pure Greek word study, we cannot honestly say tereo means protection, therefore post-tribulation is proven, nor can we say ek means removal, therefore pre-tribulation is proven. The Greek doesn't give us permission to make either leap. Instead, Revelation 3 verse 10 gives us tireo ek, keep, guard, from, out of. And then tells us the object, the hour of testing. So the real theological question becomes, open quote, does Jesus promise to keep Philadelphia from experiencing the entire period, or does he promise to preserve them while that period occurs? Close quote. That's the actual question. And to answer it responsibly, we need to compare Revelation 3 verse 10 with the other passages that describe believers during the end-time tribulation. And there's something else I don't want you to miss. Jesus says, open quote, because you have kept the word of my perseverance, close quote. The Greek has the idea of patient endurance, perseverance. So Jesus's promise comes specifically to people who have demonstrated endurance under pressure. That doesn't automatically prove post-tribulation, but it does tell us something about what Jesus cares about. Faithfulness. Whether someone believes pre, mid, pre-wrath or post-tribulation, the command is essentially the same. Stay faithful. And then Jesus says, open quote, I am coming quickly, close quote. And, open quote, hold fast what you have, so that no one may take your crown. Close quote, hold fast. Greek, krateo, tinaioutou, to seize, hold firmly, retain, cling to. So the progression is almost poetic. You kept my word, I will keep you, therefore hold fast. And Galaxy, I think the next step in your study is going to be really fun. Let's put Revelation 3:10 next to John 17:15, Luke 21:36, 1 Thessalonians 5:9, Matthew 24:29-31, and Revelation 7:13-14, and examine the actual Greek wording of each. That will let us ask a much better question than which preacher is right. We'll ask, what does the Bible itself say believers experience and when? That's where this gets really interesting.